your seats. Has everyone taken that? I genuinely can't see a thing wearing these. I cannot. Right, so I hope you all had a lovely Christmas and a happy New Year's, because we are back in business for our favourite things, debates. Yay. So, forgot to do my opening address. Good evening, everyone. You are very welcome to the, I want to call this, is this the 13th or?
It's the 14th.
14th, because I never check. 14th ordinary meeting of the Literary Entitled Society at Queen's University Belfast. So, we shall begin as we do with any announcements. I am pleased to announce the printing of our new term cards, which have been distributed around the room. You can take a look at those lovely dubbies. Just, I hope there was some display around because we're very proud of them. And proud of the term card that we have upcoming this year. Please take a look at all the motions, and our imperative here is always to encourage everyone to give a wee spiel at some point. So, if you see anything on there that you think seems interesting to you, please volunteer yourself to speak at it. Although that one about the famine's completely full already. That was the hot topic, which is where I shop.
So it's actually just mass market for hot topic.
At any rate, I'll move on to any other announcements we have. I'll hand over to our training officer, Mr Russell Nairn, to talk to you about the training we have this semester.
Hello. My evenings. Well, we've basically got the first workshop of the semester coming up next week. Queens have decided to shoot a refresher speak in the back of the head. So this is something of a refreshers event. Basically, it's going to be, if you missed the first two workshops last semester, which were very much focused on giving an introduction to debating and public speaking in both a literary and competitive speaking aspect, this one next week is going to be combining those two into one sort of crash course on how to speak. So if you are interested in speaking, as was previously mentioned by Hugh, that is probably the best venue. It's going to be Tuesday next week, probably in the PFC, probably around 6 o'clock. So look forward to the Facebook event page for that coming up. Other stuff that's going to be going on this semester that you should really consider attending, that I'm really excited for. We're planning on getting a judging workshop. So if any of you are interested in learning how to judge debates, which is particularly useful when we're sending people away to competitions, they like us to send 1 or 2 judges down with them. And it's really fun when you get to just talk about all the other people's speeches behind their back and on your own 15 minutes. That's really good. That's probably not going to be done by me. We'll probably hope to try to get Katie Hurd down to that, which is going to be sweet because she's really, really good. Other stuff, we're going to have a stylistic workshop this semester, which is great. It's going to be all about presence and performance and just generally being interesting while you're speaking, which is going to be sweet. Other than that, we're going to just work through and find whatever else we can, and probably some more competitive focused workshops towards the end. That's what we've got lined up. Swiggity swoo, over to Hugh.
And I'm going to immediately hand over to our outreach officer, Chloe Ferguson, to tell you about our schools competition, which is upcoming, and how we can all chip in and help with that.
Okay. So we have our secondary schools competition coming up on the 27th of February. For those of you who are new here, it is a secondary school competition, so we currently have 38 teams signed up to that, so that's exciting, which means please come to the judging workshop, because we will need judges. It doesn't matter if you've not even debated before. At this point, last year I hadn't debated before and I judged the school comp. You'll get training. There will be a judging sheet so you can see what we'll be looking for. And hopefully you'll be paired up with someone with a bit more experience, so you'll be guided through it. It's also really good for experience for if you want to help yourself see what's good in the speech, because you kind of pick out what's good and what's bad, and it kind of helps you train purposes as well. So yeah.
And I was going to, yes, I remember what I was going to say. We have had what is probably our strangest team up ever, and over the last few months we were put in contact with Northern Ireland Opera. They wanted to for some reason. I'm not entirely sure.
It gets weirder.
Because they asked us for their help with the production they're putting on of Sweeney Todd. So,
Okay, but why though?
Because we are obviously more respectable than, you know, the other societies. Queen's your contact. He's right. He's right. So it's on Saturday, the something of February. I'm asking for your help here, Matthew. 9th of February. We are having a debate in the Lyric Theatre at 5 p.m. Or is it 2 p.m.?
I'm not sure. 5 is what I believe.
I think it's
I think it's 5. I think
They are finalising the details, but they'll send it on. But I believe 5 is what we discussed.
Yeah, they sent me an email before I was out the door, but I obviously didn't read it. February the 9th, 5 p.m, we're having a debate in the Lyric Theatre there with Professor. What's his?
He obviously knows so much.
No, he's a boy.
He's the fella.
He's a very good professor who I have met before.
How tall is he?
Your man's hair. It'll be chaired by your man.
Right, does he appoint?
Your man's chairing it, and a debate on the themes in Sweeney Todd that we were asked to do surrounding like the justifiability of murder and the ends justifying the means. I've never seen Sweeney Todd.
Which is good because they wanted to make very clear that you don't have to have seen Sweeney Todd.
Well, very clear, you do not have to have seen Sweeney Todd. But for the turnout of numbers, it would be good to see some of you there if you can. It'll be like, I'm sure, at least as entertaining as listening to me talk. So, that's coming up. Try and think of any other announcements. I'll not give you any finalites.
We've recently been contacted by the French Society. They wanted to let us know that French Debates UK is coming up. So if you speak any French and you want to debate in it, if you're an argumentative French speaker, you want just debates. They're looking for one more person for their team, so if anyone's interested.
Yeah, well. So, as I was saying, right, I'll hand over to Shay.
It's just we've spots moving for the Trinity IVs at the end of the month. I just give them more info on that.
Yep, and it's the Trinity IV is the 1st and 2nd of February, the Women's IV, 31st of January and Friday. So if you want to travel down to those, which will be either a one-day competition for the Trinity Women's and 2 days for the regular Trinity IV, you've got team spots. What?
2 days.
Huh?
You just went 2 days.
It's transitive, I believe is the word. Transitive.
It's your memory.
I'm trying to announce the societies, and all I get is this public lambasting. And I call for order. John Burker doesn't have to deal with this kind of thing. He's dealt with worse in the past couple of days. Team spots available for that to talk to us, or especially our external convener. It's Tara Grace Conlon if you're interested in that. The IV down in Galway is then again happening on next month, which I believe, if I have the dates correct, is 13th and 14th of February, which is a bit of a further trek away, but in my opinion was the most fun IV that I went to during my time. So if you want to go see that, then again, get in touch with us because we can send you on down. And it's basically a good way to get a trip down south. I mean, we never perform well, so you don't have to stick around for the whole competition. If you know what I mean. When we went to Cork, we skipped out in the end of it and just went for pints. Which, good times for all. So, any of that interests you then, please do get in touch with us about it. I think I can wrap up the announcements now. We have membership cards printed again, so if you did not get a membership card last semester, though I think you should have because I don't think we technically ran out, do try and get one for us now. And if you wish to register and become a member of the society, that is a £5, which you can do at the end of the debate, and you will get a card for it. What?
Also,
what?
we have badges.
We got more badges.
Well, we always did. They're under my bed. I just forgot they existed. But we got them.
That mean? I thought it was almost like got more badges, and I can't demonstrate one because I lost mine. But you'll see many of our members around the room wearing them. So,
James.
Just left one from the box, no one knows.
if you wish to invest with one of those, then you have the opportunity to do so as well. I'm going to wrap up the announcements here. Before I do, I'll just remind you all, since we're in the new term, and this will be our biggest upcoming thing, our society's annual Conversazione will be in It'll be in, it should be, and as I can't give concrete details yet, it should be in the 3rd week of March. So, keep your eyes peeled out for that. It is the most fun you can have with student formal at Queen's. He'd try to disagree with you, right there. Don't listen to him. So, please do keep that time free, and we'll let you know about the strict details for it as soon as it happens, because it's a great grand old time, so it is. As anyone who's here can tell you. I'll wrap up the announcements there, and I'll hand over to the maestro of memory, Matthew Bradley, to read you the minutes of our last meeting, which was our Christmas party debate. 3 miniature ones that if you don't know what they were, you don't deserve to know because you obviously weren't there. Please welcome him up, Mr. Matthew Bradley.
Prepare to have your minds blown. What? Those are the lyrics! That's just a cash grab out of the wind and fire. Be ashamed of yourselves. So, I've been told I should have a bit more energy in me, so. So, for the first time in 2019, do you want to hear some lyrics? Yeah! I said, do you want to hear some lyrics? Yeah! No, do you want to hear some lyrics? Yes! Good, because I've got some.
Where are they?
Can you help
Right. It's a metaphor for life. Disclaimer. As the House's rules regarding profanity were waived for this meeting, to fully capture the spirit of the debate, this set of minutes features strong language and sexual references. That's got you hyped up, hasn't it? The 13th ordinary meeting of the 170th session. No, it's fine. Well, compared to the rest of it, it fits perfectly. Where was I? The 13th ordinary meeting of the 170th session at Queen's University of Belfast Literary and Scientific Society took place on the 13th of December 2018 and was attended by a good few members, ready to get... What? Did you heckle me? You heckled me. Did someone heckle me? Was it a stage? There was a stage fight. Did someone heckle me?
You're heckling yourself.
I'm not heckling... No, you heckled me telling me I was heckling myself. Can I just get on with this job that I've tried to do for so long? Okay. President Hugh Dobbin opened the meeting by relaying some sad news. Unfortunately, our planned guest chair, the Right Honourable Mr Santa Claus, had not responded to Mr Dobbin's letter, and thus would be unable to attend. As soon as Mr Dobbin broke this news to the House, a jolly ho-ho-ho boomed from outside the lecture hall, and shouted in by good boy Mr J. Kieran was the real-life, actual Santa Claus! Shortly after, a Queen's employee poked his head through the door, witnessed the dastard scene occurring, backed away, laughing with fear, permanently etched onto his strange face. Then, with a chirpy, "Hey!" Mr Matthew Bradley yeeted some frumps into the audience, and then read some minutes. After which, Secretary Matthew Bradley surprised the House by treating them to a performance of the recently penned Literature the Musical. So taken aback by the spectacle before them, the performance caused Santa Claus to shout, "Ho, ho, holy shit," and Mr J. Kieran to state, "It has made me come." The context of which will be lost to time. Unless you watch the video, which I highly recommend you do, because it's possibly the proudest moment of my life. Then it was time for private members' business, which was fairly brief. So brief, Mr Hugh Dobbin had to bring up Ian Paisley Jr. to get the ball rolling. Mr Colin McDonald noted Paisley's taking of bribes and dodgy relations with the Mouldings, and Mr Othman Sparrow questioned whether he was above the law. Drew a comparison with Boris Johnson. President Emeritus Calvin White HLM asked the House for recommendations for places in Belfast that would be a nice place to go for Christmas dinner. Various people gave recommendations, but the only good one came from me, who suggested the greatest restaurant in the known universe, McDonald's. And if anyone disagrees with me, I will punch you in the throat. That's oddly aggressive. That wasn't even written down. That just came out. Okay. That was time for President's questions, which could also be directed towards Santa. As always, there were quite a lot of these. Mr. Conway asked Santa what he wanted for Christmas. Delighted by this question, all Santa wants for Christmas is a crunch. What the hell was that? A good hearty pint. Miss Mary Kate Dobbin asked the President what he thinks of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which you described as pure good crack, so it is. Miss Becca McMinn asked Father Christmas who in the letterific was on the naughty and nice lists. Santa then put everyone into a list, apart from internal convener Mr. Matthew Bryson, who gets his own special present. Say that tall, right? Miss Kira Swale, having completed her first all-nighter, asked both Father Christmas and Papa Dobbin whether they had ever done an all-nighter, and which assignment was their favourite. Father Christmas stated that of course he's done an all-nighter, and that it's fucking difficult. Because there's more of the wee bastards every year. Our President then suggested Santa, rather than deliver gifts to the children, should instead send them V-Bucks, currency of the popular online Battle Royale game Fortnite, which is a joke I will recycle until the end of time. Other President's questions were heard from Mr. Luke Holmes, Mr. Cormac Donegan, Mr. Robert Clark, and President Emeritus Calvin Black HLA. Then, Father Christmas ran over the rules of the 3 debates, stated that the winning speaker will be awarded with a special present. It was then that the first debate was introduced. This house would tell kids the truth about Santa. Speaking for the proposition was Miss Bajaj, who presented a view of Santa as a malevolent, stalkerish pervert, and questioned why children are directed to sit on his lap. Noting Santa's other unfavourable characteristics, such as his dubious metrics for awarding presents and inequality between rich and poor children, Miss Bajaj stated that we should tell kids the truth about Santa Claus, as Christmas is all about family, rather than some old dude coming into the room. Opposing the motion was Santa's favourite boy, technology officer, Mr. Jim Kieran, who said, "You know what's better than hope? Crushing it." He stated that we should all tell children that Santa isn't real, denying them the truth of his existence. Questioning what's better than traumatizing children, Mr. Kieran came to the answer, scaring the living shit out of them. I think it's best to leave this section of the minutes here. Questions were heard from Mr. James Lutchen and Mr. Cormac Donegan. A vote was taken on the motion which read 10 ayes, 17 nays, and 0 abstentions, resulting in Jake Kieran being awarded some Galaxy chocolate and Miss Jan Bajaj some evaporated milk. Okay. And then right, this next bit I wrote, and I should have deleted, but I just thought, how am I going to tackle this in a minute? So here's the sentence, so you're just going to have to deal with it, whatever it is. So it's, buckle up, kids, it's Jesus time. The next debate of the evening was introduced. This house needs Jesus. Proposing the debate was internal convener Mr. Matthew Bryson, who asked the house to smell the sin that was in the room, which supposedly began at the start of my minutes. Mr. Bryson derided Mr. Morgan Heckman as a complete brat. And noted the sins of various letterific members. Mr. Bryson stated that bringing Jesus into your life means that when you die, you're granted entry into the best place ever, with no annoying people like Morgan Heckman. Noting the protection Jesus gives you against things such as speaking to Morgan Heckman. Sorry, it's just my job, just need to write down what he said. Don't worry, I didn't write down all of it. Mr. Bryson quoted Mark 12:3. Hello, me old chum. I'm not a gnelf, I'm not a goblin, I'm a gnome, and you've been gnomed. Stating that without Jesus, you let this man into your life, and if you accept these words, you accept the devil. Mr. Carmichael opposed the motion, utilising a PowerPoint to show how Jesus was already among us. Mr. Chris Hubble. Noting the main similarity of having a beard, Mr. Hubble drew a comparison between Jesus turning water into wine and Hubble's love of a pint. Like Jesus, Mr. Chris Hubble is a sound lad. He doesn't like racism, Islamophobia and fascism. But he isn't perfect, considering that time he stole my megaphone. Mr. McCall concluded his speech by simply saying, look at the photos, right? He's Jesus, and that's him that. Questions were heard from Ms. Pepper Hobbs, Mr. Toby Benson, Mr. Jack Patton, and Mr. Oaken's back. The vote was taken on the motion which read 12 ayes, 11 nays, and 3 abstentions, resulting in Mr Matthew Bryson being rewarded with milk. I think that's what it says in my notes, so I only have the notes. It could be Milka, I was probably a bar milk.
It was a bar milk.
Yeah, it was
I heard from Santa it was a bar milk.
You heard me because in my notes it just says milk, and I just thought that wasn't the kind of pint you want at Christmas. But you know, that joke died like my hopes of happiness. And Mr Comagal got a tin of red kidney beans. Then it was time for the last mini debate of the evening. The greatest crossover event in history, where 2 literary presidents competed to see whether this house would disband the Literary and Scientific Society. I'm expecting a reaction to that, I'm not going to. There we go. It's not a one-way thing here, you guys need to be invested as well. Put more effort in. Proposing the motion was current President Mr Hugh Dobbin, who noted... that's what we're talking about. Who noted that as a society founded for intellectual discourse, after 170 years, it has developed into a society of devilry. Noting how we come for the debates but stay for the shitposts, Daddy Dobbin noted the malignant maelstrom of in-jokes that the society has become, and noted the gradual decline of private members' business over the weeks as indicative of this. Also, I'm just going to say, don't want to style my minutes this week. This is like the 3rd draft of them. They're originally going to be styled after Pitbull, so just, I think it's... so just, you know...
I heard this.
President Emeritus Calvin Black HLM opposed the motion, wearing a rather dazzling Christmas suit. It also says in my notes that he said the word spunk at one point, and its inclusion here provides a deep insight into my maturity. As was the festive season, Mr Black treated this year's council to a Christmas roast. Bryson got a short joke, Mr Black reinforced Shady Glasgow's hatred of the Welsh, and Hugh's love of Coca-Cola was also joked about. A good time was had by all. Questions were heard from Mr James Orchard, Mr Cormac Donegan, and Mr Cormac. A vote was then taken on the motion, which read 18 ayes, 3 nays, and 5 abstentions, resulting in Mr Dobbin getting a Malteser teaser bar, and Mr Black receiving a weird concentrated ginger extract. That's the end. May I take the minutes as read?
Aye.
There is apparently a plan. Also, if anyone's going to be walking up around here, be careful of this tape. There was previously not tape here, and I almost tripped on it, so be wary of the tape. Right, it is now time for private members' business.
Point of order.
What?
Can I shut the door because it's really cold?
Shan, you may shut the door. You hero. The door has been shut, and our minds are going to be opened. Here we go.
Oh.
Right.
That's go again.
It is now time for private members' business, the part of the show where we discuss anything in current affairs that we want to talk about. And if anyone thinks they want to talk about razor blades, I seriously ask you to reconsider your course of action. Just wanted to get that out of the way. I'll go to Mr. McSparrow.
Okay, at least last time I checked the papers, 10 minutes ago, there was still a government, but
Not here.
But look, it seems like about a year's worth of news has pretty much been crammed into about 3 days at the minute. What is the general opinion around the House regarding Brexit and the current calamity? And do people think that we need a people's vote for the way forward?
That's fair. It's been a hectic couple of days. So, any thoughts on that? I'll go to... Oh, he looks so happy. Go on, Mr. Hubble. I've written a poem.
Bradley calls me, so I got distracted. I love you, Rick.
Silence from Mr. Hubble's viewer.
There once was a woman, wiry and thin, whose voice was lost in the noise and the din of her colleagues and friends, shouting and bawling about how the country is fucked and the pound is falling. How we can make our country great again by stripping down naked and burning Big Ben. To stop all the fighting, she put it to a vote, whilst her buddy Sajid dipped a bound on a boat. She begged and she pleaded across both sides of the benches. The time had come, no time for sitting on fences. The votes were counted, the result, not a shock. Theresa had her pants down, we could all see her cock. So the opposition questioned her ability to rule, challenged her to a parliamentary duel, and thus we suffered yet another debate, leaving John Bercow frightfully irate. The lobbies were filled, the numbers were in, she had kept hold of power with a margin quite slim. The Tories had joined forces with the notorious Duffers, putting their fate in the hands of those fuckers. So what happens next for this divided place? A people's vote or an election race?
You're triple fine. Point of order. What?
Motion to waive any fines acquired by Ms Hubble during Mr Hubble.
Miss Hubble's not too happy either.
Motion to waive any fines acquired by Mr Hubble during that vote.
No one seconded.
Seconded.
Second.
Yeah.
I think some point of order generally, who may well be voting second.
I don't know the procedure.
It's not a bad thing.
You can make yours now because I'm unhappy about this vote that's come up.
Mr. President, would you be prepared to waive the standing orders for party polemic for the purpose of this discussion?
Oh, I will. If you are if any of you are a mouthpiece here, you can talk about it if you want. You'll know who you are. Okay, right. Those of you who feel like Chris Hubble,
I'd like to speak in the motion.
What?
I would like to speak on the motion.
Yes, you can. This should not be a debate we're having. Mr. Glasgow.
Well, I don't think we should suspend the standing order that imposes a fine on people who swear in the House because it reduces the constitutional integrity of all proceedings, and I have a cupboard at home full of fines from the House. I would quite like it to increase in size. I think everyone should vote against this proposal because it is anti-literatic, it's probably anti-human rights. I quite like it, and I'll follow anything that's wrong.
I'm allowing one more person to speak on this because I'm not going to let this be a discussion. It will be very random.
I'm someone who has sworn multiple times in this house, multiple this evening.
I'm fine.
A lot of times. You've ruined the joke. What I was going to say was, I make sure I do it, but I know I won't get fined for swearing. So if it's waived, or if it's quoting other people, you know, really.
People swearing has never been an issue before.
It hasn't, but you know, it's just
And it was way up at Christmas because we were having the crack. And now it's gotten a bit out of control. So,
Sorry.
if you want to apparently, and this is going like the weakness of our procedures, apparently we have to have this vote. What?
Just take a vote.
We're going to take the vote, but as I'm saying, the very integrity of our systems are going to be threatened if you let them get away with this. So consider your actions very strongly. I strongly advise no one takes this course of action in regards to fines ever again. So, if you wish to waive Chris Hubble's ability to be fined during this moment to escape responsibility for his actions, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Fight the fire.
I got
And if you would like to vote against, raise your hand and say nay.
Nay.
Thank you.
Censorship. All the council.
I am censoring historical works. But, yes, the nays have it. I'm not going to abstaining because this has gone on too long.
Hey, point of order. It says that you have to take abstaining points in constitutional.
If you would like to vote abstaining, raise your hand.
There.
There. The nays have it. So give it. Hold on a second. I'm trying to I am very much trying to regain my point here, and there has not been any meaningful discussion in the present.
Yeah, we were.
Point of order.
No.
The second motion.
Listen to you, please!
The second motion.
Shut up first.
Yes, on the Brexit.
Right. Come on. Was yours a point of order or order.
It was a point of order for the President to use his discretion. It wasn't a motion.
Okay, that's actually fair. But we're past tonight anyway. Flip me. Right, I'll go to Mr. McGinnis then. This is a separate piece of private property. Or if it's not related to
As many members of the House might be aware, there was a truly momentous, decisive moment in British history yesterday when Southampton were knocked out of the FA Cup in a third-round replay after a penalty shootout following a 2-2 draw by Derby County. Now, what this means for Ralph Hasenhüttl's aggressive pressing system brought over from RB Leipzig, I don't know. What it means for Frank Lampard's tenure at the Rams, who can say? I put it to the House. Might as well. God knows Brexit's going nowhere.
What's an FA Cup?
Here.
I'll go to Mr. Doherty or Small.
Given what's happened with Derby County recent weeks, I'd say the reason why Southampton lost, and Mr Kirk can attest me on this, is because they didn't spy on Derby well enough as our great Leeds United had. Thank you.
He got it.
Separate pieces of private members' business in the House. No, I'm ending the football here, sorry. I have that discretion. I'm allowed this. Mr. Kieran.
So, you know that Brexit vote that was happening? It isn't linked to it, but it happened immediately after the vote closed.
Was it your man?
The deal was rejected. Because after everyone filtered out, in the corner of the room, this tiny, doddery old Conservative MP stands up and he draws our attention to the real important thing.
So sad.
His railway station service had not been up to scratch. And he spoke on this for 13 straight minutes. Consisting of maybe 10 MPs, half of whom were on iPads. Now, as hilarious as that is, I do think it raises an important question. Should local business really be taken into account by the House of Commons, especially in times of crisis such as this, even after time has been devoted to such important issues? Are local affairs should local affairs interfere with parliamentary time during such important periods?
Yeah, literally no idea. We thought he was trying to filibuster the thing. Or I'll go to Mr. Donegan first.
I didn't see this, unfortunately. It sounds great. But I have noticed that Brexit has proved something of a distraction for a lot of other domestic issues over the past couple of years. And that image, I think, of a sad old man crying about his train station really sums up how Brexit is almost consuming our national discussion.
It was a Cheltenham station, if I remember correctly. I'll go to Mr. Glasgow.
Yeah, as I said just at the time, I'm of the understanding, I think he was filibustering, which is a technique to sort of abuse parliamentary procedure towards a particular aim. I did look it up afterwards about the procedure about adjournments debates, which is what it was, and I think he was doing it to either shorten the amount of time that some vote would happen, or prolong the amount of time so another vote couldn't happen early in the morning the next day. So I think that's what he was doing, because he opened up a document and started reading almost TripAdvisor reviews from his constituents station. So I think that's what he was doing. In regards to what Jake actually said about local issues, I'm of the opinion that local issues, especially in Northern Ireland, should never be discussed in the British House of Commons, but in all seriousness, there is actually quite stringent procedures on what matters get discussed in Parliament, and a great amount of time goes into making sure that issues that are local but are still important are still heard and not drowned out by national considerations. So I think it is important, especially for more direct democracy, that issues like that are discussed by the national House.
Okay. Sounds like you have an opinion on the procedural side of that as well, and I'm curious.
Just a point on the adjournment debates. They're a helpful way of giving about half an hour's worth of time to issues that usually wouldn't make it onto the parliamentary business. Do I think it's a problem? No. The limited attention will be given to them anyway. It's a bit like 10-minute rule bills, are always quite unpopular. That said, I think that something raised in kind of tangential, it was raised at the point of order by leader of the SNP in the House, I think immediately following the parliamentary business statement by the Chair of the House on the day of the meaningful vote. And so setting out the parliamentary business for the parliamentary days, in fact actually talking about the business that was scheduled for today, we're talking about mental health and a couple of other issues. the Scottish, the leader of the SNP stood up and said, "Why are we wasting our time on unimportant issues?" And I think that attitude also does portray a very, very unhealthy approach to issues that aren't the single focus of everyone at the moment, that remain a crisis that we have in regards of what Brexit's doing.
Okay, so I'll go to Mr. Pan.
I believe it's very important to consider within the frame of this discussion that unlike Wales, Scotland and theoretically ourselves in Northern Ireland, England doesn't have a devolved parliament. They don't have a separate space where they can discuss more local issues, more regional issues. Instead, Parliament is their catch-all system for everything, beyond a council stage, meaning that they can't really have another space to discuss this kind of train station related debacle.
I'm going to allow one more word, I think. I'll go to. Do you have your hand up there, Censor?
No, but it's very different.
Oh, okay. Mr. McGinnis.
You know, I think Jack made this a very pertinent point. For English MPs, they don't have a local parliament. There isn't any local assembly. I do think there should be more devolution within England, especially the creation of the People's Republic of Merseyside. But these sort of issues are always going to come up, especially regarding trains, which should be nationalised and Richard Branson should be. Anyway, it's unrelated. Anyway, so I think we obviously was probably filibustering, but I think it does sort of point out the fact that England does kind of need some degree of independent assembly, just because we know that every other component part of the British Isles has got it, and the UK has got it. I think it's a bit more or less unfair for English to not have any kind of independent voice.
Right, if there is Mr. Nairn.
I think the particularly interesting thing that was pointed out was the fact of how much fun stuff you miss if you don't actually watch the BBC Parliament live stream and actually just stick to the BBC News coverage. And this is an actual point. This isn't just a meme point. Because whilst it did get us to see that fun, meme thing, this guy talking about trains really sat on his own in the corner, we were genuinely frustrated when it finished the primary debate thing on BBC News and then cut away from the following questions to go to their sort of hot take analysis in the room, and we don't actually get to hear what's going on in Parliament itself. I think it is very interesting, and you actually get a lot more if you end up watching the live stream of the event itself. And also, ironically enough, you did turn off right as he finished speaking, so we never got to hear how the story ended.
We never actually heard the full tale of Cheltenham train station. I'm sure it was riveting, uplifting, and all that else. I'm going to have to wrap up the private members' business here because we're running a bit behind time. And so, but as I said, the issues of Brexit and such in Northern Ireland, DUP, Sinn Féin, all the rest, it's always ongoing. So keep your thoughts in your head and you can present them to us again at the same time next week because we have about 11 more weeks of these. Alright, so it's time for President's Questions. I'm here to drink Coke and destroy Liberals with facts and logic, and I don't like Coke. So, let's get some questions. I'll go to Mr. Kieran.
Mr. President, what's your New Year's resolution?
New Year's resolution is don't bloody fail your law degree. Not going so well. Next question, Mr. Hickman.
I hear you have very strong opinions on razor blades this week. Could you give us an insight into what's caused this strong reaction?
I'll tell you what it is. There's a bunch of people making a discussion out of nothing. Gillette made some ad, and I watched it before I came over here because I knew that some people cared about it, and I watched it and I was like, well, this means absolutely, literally nothing. I think people really need to reevaluate what it is we deliver public attention towards with all the issues that are going on. Not much to worry about in an ad about razor blades. I should have used some today. I didn't, and I don't use Gillette ones anyway. I have the disposable Bic ones that I use far longer than is advisable. Bic make razors. Don't smart talk me, Hickman. I'll head to Mr. Glasgow.
Just on a point of clarification, is the Coke that you finished drinking a can from my multi-pack of Coke that was sitting in the sit room before we left for debate, or is that a different can?
I believe that is from the multi-pack.
You could have a can of Coke if you paid me £1. I have not yet received payment.
Give me your pound for 1 tin. That's extortion.
Sounds like a police matter now, isn't it?
It was delicious, as all tins of Coke are. Right, well, now you know my habits of thievery as well as all else. Mr. Nair.
Mr. President.
That's me.
Yes. Over recent weeks, months, years, lifetimes, you have been playing obscene amounts of the game known to some, indeed known to many, indeed known to all, as Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I'm wondering what your current opinions are regarding who the characters you would most like to see added to this game are, and who are your most wanted characters and who you think are the most likely characters to be added?
That is a very good question. I want them to put loopholes into Smash Brothers. That's what I wish for. As I said, I could reveal my true nature here and go into a literal 2-hour discussion on who I actually think is going to be added to the game. But I did notice this over here, which I'll quickly draw your attention to. Who is the artisan responsible for this? Raise your hand. Was it you?
No.
No?
No.
Fancy.
It was fancy, I think you'll find.
Well, Smash Brothers is a video game. I'm not sure if that's entirely in the public consciousness yet, but and I play far more of it than I should. It took you like 2 hours to beat me in it.
It was not 2 hours, it was 45 minutes, and it was DK hell.
Kept it count for how many times I won. So you know, Luke Holmes, E.L. Godkin, then it's Game of the Year, isn't it? So there's my piece on that, and I hope that you all maintain some level of respect for me. Mr. McSparrow.
Mr. Dobbin, it is common knowledge that you're a rather large fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Just everything, everyone knows everything about me, yes.
However, with the recent box office triumph of Aquaman, is it possible that Marvel now has a serious rival in the form of the DC extended? And are you worried as a fanboy that this could greatly affect cinema attendance of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
I'll direct you to Mr. Glasgow's notebook there. Excellently drawn sketch.
Superhero with the trident.
And I'll actually go on a tangent here, not to talk about the success of Aquaman, but to talk about how saddened I am by the box office failure of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which was the best movie released last year, and apparently nobody saw it. So, if you're in the room and you didn't see it, you should feel bad because we're not going to make another one now.
It's still in cinemas, so you should go see it.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
And as for anyone who's like rivalries between DC or Marvel or whatever, or any film companies, wise up. It's not like films have ever existed in a vacuum. There can be multiple successful film franchises going on at the same time. In fact, that's pretty much how the film industry exclusively operated until Disney monopolized everything. So, my hope is, obviously, as a massive fan of superheroes, not one particular company, that we have as many successful superhero movies at once as possible, which sadly did not include Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which you should, as I said, all see. So there we go. My identity is laid bare for everyone. Mr. Pat.
Linking back to one of the previous questions that was mentioned, given his response to the entire Razor-related debacle, do you believe we should cut off Piers Morgan's thumbs so he cannot tweet?
This is...
What?
Like, if I slag off Piers Morgan, does that count as not being neutral?
If you slag off
I think that's the moment about as neutral as you can get in Britain. That's the one that really unites us.
He could sue you, and there'd be evidence.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So I wouldn't.
And he would. That's what he would.
Please, Piers, don't do it.
I'm not going to slag off anyone in particular, but give everyone a message that if you think there are things out there in the public consciousness that you feel are targeted at you, is that everything is designed for an audience, and you shouldn't take anything that is there to deliver a particular point, which may be for a particular audience of people. That does not mean it exists to threaten your identity or values, which are separate from the audience that this particular piece of media was trying to reach out to. We should all keep that in mind. So there we go. I think I'll wrap up the President's questions there, and we shall move on to the prior opinion vote, which is where we completely, before we hear any of the speeches here, say what we feel on the motion. So, if you, in your own personal opinion, would like to vote in favour of the motion, this House would censor historical works, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Hey. And if you would like to vote against the motion, please raise your hand and say no.
I'll remember this.
I'll remind you.
Right. And if you would wish to vote abstaining, which is not one way or the other, please raise your hand and say nay. Okie doke. Mr. Matthew Bradley, are you listening?
Yeah.
Then would you do us all the honour, the pleasure of opening up 2019 with our first read back of the vote?
The vote of prior opinion reads 7 ayes, 29 nays, and 3 abstentions.
The nays have it then, the nays have it. So, we will now move on to the main proceedings of the evening. I will remind everyone, especially since the prior opinion vote was weighted in a particular way, that obviously, since we need to fill out the panel every week and people just want to give speeches sometimes, the views which will be reflected by all speakers do not necessarily reflect their own. So don't go on your Twitter rants at anyone. That's not good crack. Not that that's ever happened, but I'm just giving you a warning. I monitor that stuff.
They have.
When?
Oh, you didn't have
Was that the abortion debate? A name dropped it. And despite any other tomfoolery, I'll be enforcing the fine rule, and anyone trying to get at me over it, I don't know how I'm going to react to that. So,
Physical violence.
no physical violence is allowed in here. Elizabeth is watching.
She's one of the
She would never condone anything bad. Let's move on to the debate. We shall move on, and please welcome up, speaking first for the proposition, our outreach officer, Miss Chloe Ferguson. Yes.
Alright, good evening, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Tonight the proposition are here to argue for the motion, this House would censor historical works. But first, Happy New Year 2019, and we're still here at the Litterific. Still. I'm not really sure how I feel about New Year's, if I'm being honest. Though one thing I always find interesting is what people choose as their New Year's resolutions. Is that time of year where we publicise the restriction of food, alcohol and other self-deprecating habits that come into trend. And why is that? It's because as a society we have convinced ourselves that a new year equals new change to become something better. We're remembering how we were from the year before, picking out what we didn't like, and we're deciding to change it because that's natural. That's what we know. We take this time stamp as an opportunity to look back on history and decide what is of value and what has faded from relevance. And is restriction within this framework just not another version of censorship? We are recognizing, hey pal, maybe this wasn't the best thing to be saying or doing. And we aren't forgetting it happened. We just are kind of decided not to do it anymore. We're not denying that we ever bit our nails, swore continually, or in President Hugh Dobbin's case, just didn't work at the law degree. But from here on out, we are censoring ourselves to fit a different frame of thinking. Censorship is natural in terms of practicality. We do it all the time, mostly without even realizing it. It's inherently integrated into our everyday lives, and to take a blanket position that it has no positive or practical applications in reference to historical work is just kind of stupid and ignorant. Censorship has utility and inherently positive applications. Yes, in externally, we as a proposition recognize it can be damaging. Though if we took that sums in everything, what would we have? Take coffee, caffeine. Even in appropriate small doses, it provides a service. Whether that is a nice taste, which question, does anyone actually like coffee? Or an energy kick before heading to work? Censorship works similar. This has defined censorship as the restriction of language and works from promoting outdated and discriminatory behaviour and values. This house argues there is a difference in censoring for appropriate circumstances and wiping away or rewriting history. History in itself is dynamic and is continually shaped by modern day and societal norms, which decipher the difference between right and wrong. Censorship works to allow the recognition of past events and narratives, with creating promotion for the ideals those time periods represents. This house is in no way supporting the censorship of injustice, of events that could be beneficially swept under the rug or forgotten about, facts about human atrocities and discrimination that make any decent person uncomfortable or squirm. That isn't the point. It's not the erasing of events and narratives. Otherwise, history is forgotten about and in turn repeated. I'm not advocating for the hiding information or burning of books because, to be honest, I'm an English student and thought of even just like bending the spine on a book would kill me. But the freedom of expression and exploration can exist side by side with censorship. It's merely a practical way of enforcing what is appropriate in a wide and varying load of circumstances. Thank you. Taking literature, for example. There are rules when I'm up here, giving this speech, going down to the very language I say, and I'm about to break one.
No.
Bryson, fuck off. Like, I know, I just swore, and I know I'm fine, and yes, Shay, I'll drop the Merlot over at some point. But in debate, I'm not allowed to swear, and is that a bad thing? No, it's practical. It's what's appropriate for the circumstances. I'm standing in front of an audience of people participating in what is meant to be, at least for the most part, a formal setting. By censoring mine or any other speaker's language, we are keeping a mirage of professionality. And I mean mirage because, let's be honest, we aren't that. And this same concept is applied to the censorship of historical work. For sake of debate, and so we are totally clear on this, we did the proposition to define historical works as literature, academic or fiction, arts, films, just really anything that holds historical value. In the remainder of my speech, I'm going to be talking a bit more about the practical applications of censorship surrounding the prevention of conflict and promotion of positive behaviours. My colleague Cormac will be discussing how censorship can be used positively to enhance our understanding of history, and Shay will be tying it all up for you in a nice sweet bow so you can see how censorship is just grand. Censorship, when looking at history, allows for the discrediting of behaviours and belief systems that are outdated and promote derogatory or discriminatory phrasing. What we need to remember is the majority of us here live in this university bubble, so not everyone is looking at a novel from the 1800s with academic research in mind. Language utilised is taken at face value and in turn promoting behaviour that infringes with the values held today over 200 years later. And that's completely normal. Like history, language is dynamic and always changing. Learned that in English class.
On that point, man.
No, thank you. Like if someone dropped a cup of water back in 2009, and the person next to me said, "Yeet, that's a mood," first I'd be very confused, and then asking what exactly a yeet is.
On that point,
Yes.
what is it?
I still don't know, but it's normalized now, so it's okay.
E for distance, OB for accuracy, basic shit.
There you go, there's your answer. Because the utility of language in a modern context, even 10 years later, has changed massively. The kids book The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn repeatedly uses the N-word, and no edgelords ask me what the N-word is, because otherwise you're going to get decked outside. And in later editions has been changed to slaves. The word still carries a deep, painful history, but is acceptable and more approachable to the modern point. If an easily influenced child read the original version of the book, the promotion of such behaviour is normalising what is known as an offensive slur. Censorship alleviates that. It allows the narrative to exist, but does not promote it. Language is altered, but the narrative is retained. The original version is still available to read, and censored to fit the level of appropriate circumstance, of the appropriateness of the circumstance. Because you just wouldn't say that word to a child, would you? But if you're an academic in Queen studying child literature back in the day, I mean, of course you're going to read the original context. Outside of fiction, looking at political documents or manifestos like military and intelligence documents, government censorship of documents of that nature has practical effects. Like, I don't really want to go to war because it looks like we're going to at some point. So avoiding conflict would be pretty good overall, if you ask me. The proposition agrees censorship in extreme circumstances is destructive and impacts free speech in its form. However, in appropriate circumstances, it can be a tool for the enforcement of positive values, as my colleague Cormac will discuss in his proposed model surrounding censorship. Thank you for listening, and Happy New Year, and with the proposition.
There's some seats about in there for such gentlemen. I was just wondering, it's okay, sorry. Please welcome up next, speaking firstly for the opposition, Mr. Hubble.
Are you started?
We are started in 1 sec. No.
Alright, good evening everyone. The proposition has taken a rather safe but narrow view of censoring historical works. I'll agree that it is a tool, but not just kind of a basic tool for the moral good of society, more a tool for the destructive nature of historical and political revisionism. So we, the opposition, would like to kind of expand on what a historical work actually is, rather than just kind of confine it to maybe a piece of medium like a literary work, TV program or film. We would expand it to maybe historical accounts, testimonies, and further. And as Kira will be covering later, she'll be looking at the theory of thought police and the denial and cover-up of atrocities by future governments, and in today's societies as well. So just to begin, we, the opposition, condemn the futile and potentially destructive censorship of things like books. An argument to say that it allows for a safer education environment or books to be introduced at a lower level, there is one key problem. If these books are featuring language that has to be censored, it is highly likely that we are seeing other extreme content in these mediums as well that could also corrupt and perhaps, floor their minds a little. Not just yet. As soon as censorship is introduced into a medium, such as, especially in the historical context, its accuracy is immediately undermined, such as the removal of racial slurs or symbolism like the swastika. Go ahead.
I believe it was the original version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, in which the Oompa Loompas were depicted essentially as racial stereotypes. And it is by the censorship and removal of those that it has become the beloved children's classic it is today. Do you not think that, with that in mind, censorship can at times improve works?
Okay, so Oompa Loompas and racial stereotype is definitely not the message I got from it the first time around, perhaps. So
You read the censor first.
maybe I did.
Go back and forth.
Okay, so Yeah, but to go on that actual point, actually, some of the greatest books in literative history, you might actually be taken aback by kind of the presence of racial overtones as such. To Kill a Mockingbird, it's kind of paramount here. Tones include social morality, racism, and inequality. It's literally the key themes of the book, and if you to take these out, you may as well burn the book. And I am sure I will have to make a analogy flash someone that's a book burning. Okay. Yeah.
Me again. Okay. So proposition isn't suggesting that we're taking those things out. And the kind of the crux of my argument was that we're replacing the language with something that's more sensitive to modern life, and it's showcasing those narratives, but we're not promoting them. That's the difference there.
But the purpose of some of these books was never actually to promote this kind of behaviour. It was to reflect the real historical context that they took part in. By removing these, we undermine them, we promote misinformation, and people's interpretations become clouded, distorted, and just simply wrong. So, yeah, we trust our education system, and
on that point,
yeah. So, and especially in education amidst censorship, its quality suffers, and we lose faith in this institution that is now poisoned by potential revisionism and a moral good that misinforms people. So, we must also consider the logical constraints of censorship. People naturally do not appreciate censorship. They will try and find loopholes. When the annotated version of Mein Kampf was reprinted for the first time in Germany since World War II, within a year it became a bestseller. Despite bookstores' attempts to try and limit sales of the books, people still find a way, and they will find further ways through piracy, proxying, the deep web, you name it. Yeah.
On that point,
go ahead.
I'm not. Are you suggesting that because there are ways around, that you can find these uncensored copies of these works, that censoring versions of books for kids is pointless? Are you expecting some kid who can't read Huckleberry Finn with the M word in it to go to the dark web and find a PDF? I'm not quite sure what your point is here.
I am not sure why a kid is reading something like Huckleberry Finn exactly, but it's okay. Especially with those. Right. Along with Mein Kampf, if we were to censor it in general, and if people are looking for perhaps historical accounts considering World War II and the horror of the genocides that accompanied it, there is maybe no better source than a first-hand account of the mindset and psychology of the man that kind of led up to it. And to further talk about the government and kind of slowly close up here and segue into Kira's section, if a government body is responsible for heading this censorship, how can we hold faith in that they are not manipulating this authority to their advantage? History has always been written, or to kind of put it more truthfully, misused by the victor or the succeeding authority. For example, after World War I, Germany had adopted Germany adopted relevant government files to fit their argument as to the origin of the war. And this was assumed as the truth by many non-German historians. It was not until following World War II the files fell into the Allies' hands and history was corrected. And to kind of close up here, FDR kind of puts it very well. No man and no force can abolish memory. People will strive to find what they want regardless of any guidelines in place. It is a futile measure that is not worth the effort. It is a vain measure that also hurts our human history and culture, and we, the opposition, urge you not to turn a blind eye to our pleas, as the proposition would turn a blind eye to this blatant attack on our culture. Thank you.
And if we could get a second round of applause for Mr. Holmes's main speech. And now to continue the proposition's case, please welcome up Mr. Cormac Donoghue.
Oh boy, this is a hell of a motion, isn't it? I don't 100% feel like going into it right now. I'm going to delay the inevitable that little bit longer and do a quick bit of rebuttal. Firstly, historical accounts from the time aren't necessarily 100% accurate and may reflect a personal bias to source the facts. And if a reader consumes that history and considers that as a wholly correct version of the truth, that may build a dangerous misunderstanding of history. We can actually distinguish between differences in context and works, and that one objectionable word may be fine in one context, but hugely problematic in another. I wouldn't necessarily say that we should censor To Kill a Mockingbird, because in that book, the word has a specific meaning, and I don't think it's a problematic one. Okay, let's go. Today, I'm going to argue that censorship, wielded with extreme caution, precision, and significant bipartisan checks and balances, rather than obscure the truth of history, as it has done in the past, could potentially further our understanding. Because history is not the immutable objective fact that we may sometimes think of it as. History is liquid, shifting and mercurial, changing with the tide and the times. New information, new methods, and new perspectives continually arise to challenge previously established truth. To give one example, it was a popular theory, repeated in history books, that Tutankhamun, the famous Egyptian pharaoh with a, frankly, unearned reputation for cursing dudes who nipped his stuff, was a victim of murder. However, advances in technology allows you to identify that the pharaoh was more likely felled by a broken leg that became infected. A tad anticlimactic? Sure, but probably more accurate, which is what history is supposed to be, right?
On that point.
Not my point. Another point I'd like to bring up to challenge the idea of history being immutable is the question of who exactly is telling it. History books can be written by just about anyone. All those history students you see in the play library with their sad eyes and they will likely go on to write history books and contribute to our ongoing conversation of history. There may even be members of the litterific who will one day contribute to that international understanding. And isn't that scary? Not on that one, sorry. As a result, not every history book is subject to the same rigorous research and peer review as others. And especially thanks to the miracle of online publishing, any old mad person who can write poorly researched nonsense like the Super Smash Conundrum, why President's questions is rubbish, no thank you, and now their provably incorrect worldview spread unchecked. But more concerning than that is the existence of individuals who willfully misrepresent history in order to suit the worldview they are attempting to impart onto the reader.
On that point.
Or on that point.
Not quite. To use one very modern example, there are still history classes in the American South that operate on outdated and often One of the examples that stands out most in my mind is the case of the first Thanksgiving, which was not the joyous coming together of settlers and Native Americans that is traditionally portrayed, but rather occurred many years after the first formal introduction between the settlers and natives, and in fact marked a massacre of natives by the settlers. Sorry, no. To quote the government of Massachusetts at the time, "From that day forth shall be a day of celebration and thanksgiving for subduing the Pequots." And yet, the archetypal image of the meal between the natives and the settlers, which was in fact a propaganda image manufactured by the American government in order to promote unity after the end of the Civil War, is more often what persists in the popular consensus of politics. Yeah, alright.
Surely the examples you're discussing are more distant examples of censorship being used towards historical documents than they are things that we should censor going forward.
Absolutely, but as I will discuss later, history is a continually progressing experiment, and things that we may one day consider to be correct will be re-evaluated in the future to come. So, that is censorship, but I would argue that in the same way that our removal of that work is in fact another positive example of censorship. Not where was I? It is clear then that historical works are not necessarily entirely truthful, and often do contain inaccuracies, most accidental, but sometimes deliberate. And we have the proposition to argue that these inaccuracies have the potential to cause great harm by perpetuating myths and allowing disproven ideas to continue persuading people. To counteract this, we would argue in favour of careful and measured censorship, carried out with the significant checks and balances, and by an independent committee made of a multitude of different perspectives to to examine these aspects of historical works that are provably, factually false, in order to call the spread of misinformation.
On that point,
I know. And I don't even think this is even that radical of a notion. We already have checks and balances in academia to prevent falsehoods like the ones I'm talking about. It's called peer review. We're just suggesting that it could be applied retroactively, not to eliminate perspectives, which almost always have value no matter how much you may disagree with them, and not to quell debate, as there will likely be things we will never be entirely certain about, and free and open debate is key to furthering our understanding of history. Simply to eliminate... Sure.
What form will this censorship take? Will it take the form of complete removal of that which we find inappropriate?
I think that would depend on the context, but as I will go on to mention, I think there will be examples where we find works that are so objectionable and so factually inaccurate that I would advise them to be removed from the public discussion. Right, that's a bitch. To use one fairly modern example, there are still history classes in the American South operating out the ultimacy encounter the American Civil War, educating children with inaccuracies like the war had nothing to do with slavery, it was for the states' rights. A view that neatly sidesteps the fact that the state right that most secessionist states were concerned with was the right to keep slaves. By allowing these classes to operate based on outdated works, we are allowing children to grow up with a warped perception of a crucial point in history, and might even be partly responsible for much of the racism that exists in America today.
On that point.
It's pronounced.
Oh.
In this instance, I argue that the removal of these kinds of inaccuracies from our schools and libraries could be hugely beneficial. Like I said at the beginning, history is not simply a list of things that happened in the past. History is an ongoing effort, where our knowledge and perspective on the past is continually changing and updating itself at the time. Many historical works which are airtight today may one day be completely disproved in the future. And in a hypothetical scenario where historical works are reviewed in the way we suggest they are, it's possible that certain works exist now may be reevaluated in the future and re-enter the conversation, a development that I would welcome. Because we have the proposition believe that censorship, in certain carefully managed circumstances, rather than obscure the truth, may in fact deepen our understanding.
Alright, and to continue the case for the opposition, please welcome up Miss Keir Swale.
Right, so first of all, I'm going to start off this debate by saying something about what the second member of the proposition was talking about. Now, he was talking about, right, we need strict rules, we need strict regulations. I completely agree with that. But let's be real here, in the real world, governments can change those rules. And governments can shift those rules to whatever they want. And also, you were talking about, you know, how it's bad, how the American government pretty much didn't talk about slavery when they were talking about Civil War. Isn't that censorship, though? Like, that they didn't talk about slavery in the first place and how that's a bad thing and how we need to uncensor it by basically going, yes, it was about slavery. So, and I'm going to bring up to my first point, which is basically a concept that of how people control their nations, basically through the power of persuasion. Which, there's two modes. There's the power of persuasion, and there's the power by force. Now, the power of force isn't that great. It's pretty much you do that, otherwise we beat you up. Not a great model because pretty much it arises dissent. People hate being told what they need to do, but the power of persuasion acts in a more intricate way. That it pretty much controls what the nation can see. It controls what the people can see. So if the people don't know that there's a better thing out there, why would they fight for it? And also, modern day governments have censored history to cover up massacres. And one such massacre is the Algerian massacre, which happened in France. Now, I'm going to tell you about this. Pretty much what happened was, this guy called Papon basically ordered his own men to deal with the peaceful protest, and those police officers threw them into the river. Now, obviously the French government didn't really like that this happened, a bit bad for their image. So they censored it. They basically went, right, press, you're not publishing any of the accounts, any of the absolute awful pictures. We're censoring history. And do you know what happened because of that? The victims were forgotten. And I'm going to show everyone the plaque that is there to this day because of this censorship. I'm going to translate it because I recognise that everyone here doesn't speak French. To the memory of the numerous Algerians killed at the start of killed at the bloody repression of a peaceful protest. Now, I think it's very vague, don't you think? The fact that the number is not recorded, there are no names on that plaque. And do you know what? This massacre happened in 1961 and the plaque only went up in 2001 by the mayor of Paris, not even the official government. The official government didn't even recognise it until 2012. No. And pretty much what this means is that it kind of indicates that we don't really know what happened during it. We don't know how many were killed. We have a rough estimation, but that's about it. Don't really have any names of who were killed. And do you know the perpetrator of this guy, Papon? Guess what happened to him? He got a Medal of Honor that same year. No. He got a Medal of Honor that same year because the French government covered it up. He didn't get any justice for it until 30 years later for something that wasn't even related. And that's what happens when you censor history. Fair enough, I can admit, putting the N-word out of Huckleberry then I can recognise. But we need to recognise where it's used in awful context. And it dims the voice of victims. Go for it.
And you literally just said that you do agree there should be censorship. That is what we're arguing. We're saying that there should be censorship in appropriate circumstances. We never said, actually I explicitly said that we're not promoting the censorship of unjust and disastrous events. That is reading completely what I said out of context.
Alright, so pretty much I would argue that's extremely limiting though. You can't just go, right, historical censorship is only doing this, because you need to widen that. And also, another context, I would argue that Huckleberry Finn, if it does continue, I would say I can see it. I wouldn't do it myself. I would have them read at a far later date where they could read the N-word and it would be perfectly fine because they'd be mature adults that could recognise the historical context instead of them being taught at a young age. That's what I would do. But anyway, so... No, that's Barbie. So, next thing, so the French government have censored historical works to basically cover up what they did. And this led to not much being known about the actual victims and basically the perpetrators getting away with it. So now, I'm going to move on to basically a bigger context, which is pretty much where they censor historical works to basically control what the people know about their own nation to keep down dissent. Like, for example, the Taiwan, what happened when martial law was implemented in Taiwan, where pretty much they weren't allowed, books were censored that had communist ideologies, everything like that. And pretty much that was there so the people wouldn't know that what they were living under was a bad thing. Pretty much anyone who did read these censored works were shot. Loads of academics were shot and everything like that. And that's what I mean, because knowledge is power in the nation. And if you remove this knowledge of the full context from the nation, then you remove their power. You remove their power to dissent because they don't know what they're dissenting about. And I'd like to end this debate by saying, I hate bringing up the Nazis, but it's the biggest example I can. And pretty much they tried to eradicate what happened. Now, what I would like to end this debate on was, what if they succeeded? what if we didn't know that that atrocity happened? And I personally wouldn't like to live in a world where we didn't acknowledge the millions of people that were slaughtered that day. So that's why I urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you very much.
Alright, speaking next, our treasurer and a generous purveyor of tins of Coke, Mr Shay Glasgow.
So I think as sort of what's happened thus far in the debate is that the opposition has completely mischaracterised what we as opposition have been saying throughout, and I sort of knew this would happen. The opposition has characterising us as some kind of Orwellian fascistic police state seeking to suppress knowledge of massacres and to suppress ideas and to dim the impact of victims, as I've just said. Sort of to ruin historical inquiry. It sounds to me almost like the opposition is sort of providing a skewed narrative of the debate, presenting their own facts and censoring what actually happened and sort of justify what they're saying. It's sort of ironic that sort of the Orwellian, I think, characteristics from anyone in the House is more so coming from their side than ours. And that is the main point of clash in this debate. So what we're doing, right, on the proposition, I would have loved to have stood up here and go on some kind of moral crusade and say, we're going to delete all references of sex from everything, and we're going to burn any book, we just burn any book, you know what I mean? We're just not even going to care what happened yesterday. We're just going to that would have been good, but that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is a lot more practical. And when practice is what public policy makers have to be, and that's what this is. Okay? And it's sort of mediocre. What we're saying, it sort of sounds boring. It's not like, ban everything, or sort of free love, don't ban everything. What we have put forward and what we put before the House is a sensible, measured approach to censorship. One that, as we've already pointed out, in fact, already takes place in our laws today, and I'll go on that in a minute. And what we are arguing that fundamentally, in order to sort of preserve our society today, and to actually bring out the truth in history and leave the false facts by the wayside, we actually need to apply this sort of censorship retroactively and retrospectively as well. So just to clarify what we're sort of talking about altogether and why it beats this size of the House is sort of sort of rebellion, sort of dictatorship and all that crap. So what we're saying, free speech laws, right, or hate speech laws I should say, they're already in place today. I couldn't stand up here, especially not being recorded, and say some things. I cannot say things that discriminate against any group of people based on their ethnicity or race or sex or no thank you or anything like that. I couldn't say anything that would incite violence under treason laws. I couldn't say anything that would incite violence against the state. No thank you. So I can't do any of these things. I can't do it, and I can't write them down in any fictions today. I'm going to get on to how modern censorship boards do actually exist today and give some practical examples, real examples of why they're a good thing as well. So I can't do that. So what is to say that we cannot go back in time then and do exactly the same thing? Because we absolutely have to. Okay, there are things in our modern Western liberal society that we hold dear. Well, one of them is tolerance. Okay, tolerance is one of sort of the fundamental pillars that allows our society to function. And if we have historical texts from the past that are by necessity intolerant, then sort of we actually cannot tolerate those. That is the limit of tolerance. You can't tolerate intolerance, because it's a practical paradox, because if we tolerate intolerance, it allows intolerance to grow and destroy the very conditions in which things everyone can't actually tolerate it. And that's exactly what Chloe was saying. She's saying that we need to censor some works. We need to censor some works in the way that we naturally censor ourselves today, to essentially shut down dangerous historical works, one that promote negative ideas. The Nazis were mentioned, and I may as well respond. I didn't bring them up though, so the Nazis' ideas were in large part informed by a huge corpus of work in the scientific work, they called it at the time in the 19th century, about eugenics, and about how scientifically some races were superior to others, and we now know that this factually is not true. Why should we not go back in time and absolutely eradicate eugenics works completely? Because they're still used today by far-right groups and neo-Nazi groups to justify scientifically, air quotes for the recording, no thank you, to justify their policies today. talking about how it can actually promote historical inquiry as well. It's absolutely true. What we are striving to do is, there's a phrase used in Catholic canon literature when a bishop reviews a piece of work in a doctrine to say that it's free from doctrinal errors, it's nihil obstat, free from error. And that's what essentially we're trying to do. We're trying to promote the truth of history here by reviewing historical documents. I'll keep your hands up to make sure that they are free from things that we know factually not to be true, and we've explained how that will be implemented practically.
Given you're citing the Catholic Church, which is probably the biggest historical censorship body on earth.
Here.
You know, and denier of all sorts of human rights and withdrawal of the organisation generally. Yes, no, I think the point is, my point to you is, why are you saying we should censor historical works like, for instance, eugenics, although obviously wrong and terrible as it is? You know, are we peddling to Generation Snowflake here by in essence by not allowing to toughen themselves on the deal with material that they might not necessarily have to agree with, but bloody well we'll just have to look at it anyway and, you know, get used to it and toughen up.
So I have several answers to your sort of several questions hidden in there. Number one, I used the Latin phrase nihil obstat because I wanted to sound clever. So that's why I was going. In regards to what you were saying about the whole snowflake thing, that's not what we're talking about. We're going to use another Latin phrase, veritas, which means ultimate truth. What we're doing is essentially shaving off things in history that we know now to be empirically and factually incorrect. Okay, it's not some philosophical notion of what is right and wrong. It's what we know to be wrong. We know eugenics is wrong, and we know it inspires people to do terrible things. I would wish that we could trust everyone on earth to read things and read dangerous radical ideas that hurt other people with a forensic mind, but unfortunately many people are very stupid. A lot of these philosophies, such as things that purport that one race is genetically superior to another, appeal to people because they're in situations where they have so little that those ideas that they are inherently superior appeal to them because they have nothing else going for them. And those conditions are always going to exist on earth while we still have poverty. So we must completely eradicate those things that aren't true. You know, just general historical works. If you look at how the Irish were portrayed in Punch magazine, they were mostly drawn as monkeys. Which was another racial thing, by the way. You know, we simply cannot have that, as well as what we've done. The opposition has sort of said that it's impractical, have some sort of deep web 5-year-old Googling, you know, Huckleberry uncensored version, you know. Well, besides the fact that it's obviously nonsense, we've explained how we're going to do it. And this is how censorship boards, which operate in modern societies, do it at the minute. So we'll have a board of experts drawn from a wide range of society to look at things that are historically untrue, to look at things that are so intolerant that we cannot tolerate them in our society, and making sure that they are gone because we are better than them. Just one final point, and then I'll finish up to demonstrate the practical benefits. So the last book that was banned in Ireland by the censorship board, which is still in place, was in 2003. It was a fictional book that had large sections that depicted in great detail the graphic rape of a child. And it was banned from publication in shops because of that. Are we really saying that we want to do away with censorship and have books like that sold in our society? I don't think so. Please, you have to vote for us.
And now to close out the case for the opposition and the debate as a whole, please welcome up Mr Chris Hubble. They were trying to pick up your exam paper, but you were having none.
I've got away with that a lot.
Alright, you may begin now.
I'm not going to do the big sweary quote I was going to do because you look very modern. We've heard some. Look you too. Thank you. We've heard some fine speeches tonight. I would like you to imagine that you leave here having heard one speech in particular that captured you, that has struck a chord, and you go home, turn on your computer, load up the audio recording, as I'm sure you do every week, and strap yourselves in for a retelling of those awe-inspiring words that so grasped you and your imagination the first time round. But as the speech approaches, all you hear is silence. The powers that be, Mr Dobbin and his Goebbels-esque propaganda gimp, have thought tonight's speeches too outrageous, too potent to be publicised, and thus have removed them. Now imagine you arrived here today, sat down in the aisle and saw that the opposition benches were empty. You thought it was a debate you'd come to see, but instead you're subject to a 2-hour lecture by the likes of Mr Shea Glasgow on the benefits of censorship. Instead of a debate, the exchange of ideas and concepts, we have but one side's truth, a distortion, the manufacturing even, of knowledge. Instead of discourse, we have directive. Instead of challenge, we have simplicity, authority, and the horror of Mr Glasgow being allowed to ramble on for 2 hours. On my point, and the point of the opposition, that we the opposition have tried to make this evening, is that censorship is simply this: the removal of one side's discomfort, the denial of alternative times, lifestyles and perspectives, the covering up of hard truths under the guises of security, prevention, or the safeguarding of modern-day liberal sensibilities. It is the first resort of a fragile people unsure of the strength, the longevity of their own values when challenged. The opposition have told us tonight, firstly, that with the extremely cautious exercise of censorship, we could potentially bring about a moral good. My question to that is, who do we trust to bring this about? The government? The media? Shay? Sorry,
that's fine.
No, I don't think we can trust any of them with that. Again, sorry, Shay. Huckleberry Finn was brought up as a good example. One problem with that is they replace the N-word with the word slave. Those words aren't interchangeable. When you have a word that's in the historical context, you can't just replace it with a word that makes us feel better. Even though the context is not the same, the N-word was not used explicitly for slaves, and slaves weren't explicitly N-words. No. So if you're afraid of children reading inappropriate words in books, give them different books. There's lots of them. A time will come when they can read those books and comprehend the complexities inherent in them. If that is not now, then so be it. Are we so fragile in our sensibilities, in our sense of morality, that we are afraid that in reading a racist word, we will stick on a St George's flag and start chanting Free Tommy? Maybe I am more sure of myself than the proposition, but in my mind, an idea is not sacrosanct just because I've read it. One sec. If you are offended by a word, a piece of writing or art, good. It is proof that we have moved on. That does not mean we should remove it. Yeah.
Has the recent events not shown that we cannot trust the general population in terms of service? There are some things they just should not see.
I don't really want to get into but I do think it's, to be honest, quite an arrogant view and very democratic. So, as is the difficulty with pre-written debates, we've focused on markedly different things. The proposition is focused on mainly cultural examples, the limited use of censorship to bring historic works up to our modern standards of language and morality. Whilst we in the opposition are focused more on the historical abuses of censorship, the national myth building that censorship is allowed and the horrors it is disguised. No matter, they're one and the same. Whether we censor a word, a song, an idea, or a genocide, not only do we fail to remove that now ever tempting forbidden fruit and allow it to germinate in the dark recesses of human thought, but also we allow an element of control over our creativity, which has the potential to landslide into something far more Orwellian than a mere tailoring of vocabulary. Censorship is the tool of the authoritarian, those who seek to maintain order, who wish to quash any challenge to their own culture, morality, and legitimacy.
It is the empires, fascists and dictators of years gone by who have used this method of reframing the past in their favour. It is revisionism, whether undertaken for good or bad, and it shows a scant disregard for the complexity of our past and for the tragedy of our history. I urge you to vote for us, not because the proposition has malintent, but because those things they wish to censor are the very things we must learn from. They may bring us discomfort, but from pain comes growth.
I really want to pick up some of the kids. I've never even done this, even though I was picked on, I didn't pick up the first
Yeah. Sorry, Jay. But no memento, everybody. Control yourselves. Bear on Right.
That was spectacular.
That's me in a nutshell. Right. We now move on to a round of questions, which is where you, the people, can have your say, but not for too long if the motion passes, obviously. That was a joke. I don't take a side in these things. So, firstly, we will, as we always do, go to any questions in the room for the proposition.
Head us up. Let's go.
So you're going to go for Mr. Nairn.
Alright, so from the proposition multiple times, we've had this notion of intellectual snobbery, in the sense that certain works would be censored in the sense they would be kept specifically aside for academics. You know, we had this notion from Chloe regarding keeping works aside for academic purposes, and we had this notion sort of repeated from Shay by saying that, you know, the public are stupid and can't be trusted with certain works. Do you not think that instead of promoting this academic, elitist kind of attitude, we should instead focus on creating a society in which people are educated appropriately to the point where they are able to engage intelligently with controversial works, as opposed to just doing this reinforcement of elite mindsets by keeping it all to ourselves in our little dragon's hoard of academic insolence?
I feel like that was fairly targeted at you, Shay.
Of course, in any situation where you're talking about what is essentially the withholding of not necessarily knowledge, but at least ideas from others, it's going to have a twang of elitism. What we've got to keep in mind, and this is what I was saying, and actually it's what the others in the field do, actually propose some practical policies on how to deal with the issues that we're trying to solve by censoring this. Please vote for us. What we're looking at, practically, we've seen the negative effects that leaving these ideas uncensored has. The government it does actually try and implement sort of a pseudo policy of censorship at the moment, where if you're identified, it happens at universities, it's a lot of reading what could be called radical text online. You're sent ads for like the government's de-radicalisation scheme and things like that.
I get them now.
It demonstrates that there is actually a serious need, and there's a serious causal relationship between sort of the ingestion of these dangerous ideas and sort of the devastating consequences of when these ideas are implemented by people. I think sometimes we can't trust that people will read these documents in a forensic way, and although we can try all we can in schools to educate people so that they can, sometimes, and our society at least at the minute is in such a way that that's just not possible. People will always be in situations where they can be radicalised and taken advantage of by these very dangerous ideas, and I think practically in the present instance it's much more important to suppress those ideas at the moment and prevent the atrocities and maintain our democracy than actually then take some wishy-washy policy of education. That's a long-term thing. Chloe wrote me a note
And opposition to respond.
Nothing says democracy like suppression of ideas. I would say that what Mr Glasgow did sort of talk about in his main speech was sort of government censoring documents that now would cause trouble. If say the Islamic State produced a leaflet, that's not historic work, we're not talking about current day censorship, we're talking about historic works. think it's 30 years that the government censored sensitive documents for, and then it's turned into a historic work. So we're not talking about censorship generally, we're specifically talking about historic works. I would also say that, I agree with Mr. Net, it is a level of arrogance that people have that we sort of understand that the public can't comprehend difficult thoughts, and that if they read something that they're automatically going to go start fighting for the National Front. It's not true. People have a level of comprehension that I think the proposition isn't really given them.
And we'll go now to any questions for the opposition. Mr. Rosen, yes.
Thank you. So my question is directed to the second speaker of the opposition. The second speaker actually gave plenty of examples of how knowledge is power and the Holocaust and slavery. But she seemed to agree with the fact that there are certain ideas, certain words, certain slurs, religious or racial, the censorship of which has actually benefited society. So my question is, does she not realize that it is the concept of censorship that is being debated? It's not about how much of it is needed or when it is required, but it's simply the ethical consequences of the idea as a whole.
I think one thing I would say with the whole thing is basically there is that thing of, you know, modern censorship versus historical censorship. And personally, I think, like, I'm an English student, I've read plenty of ideas and plenty of words and plenty of slurs and other things that I'm horrified by. And I think that's a great thing. If you can look back on a piece of work, like, and see the N-word or see people going against, you know, people with religious beliefs, I personally think that's a great thing. It shows that our society has progressed, that we can look at this work and go, that was awful, that happened, and learn from it, instead of, you know, going, right, we'll remove this word here, remove this word there, and pretend it didn't, and then go, right, this will be to the public. Because you can't learn from something you don't know about or aren't confronted with.
And proposition to respond to that? Are you seeking clarification? Sorry.
Yes, kind of.
Okay.
Because that's not what you said in your speech, did it? Is it?
Pretty much what I said in my speech was pretty much what governments have done have like, for example, the French government, for example, 40 years passed and they were still suppressing.
I'm simply talking about the point on the N-word.
On the
and how
N-word.
you said that it's good that it has been removed from scripts.
No, I said I can see why it would be removed. Like, but personally, I believe with Huckleberry Finn and that kind of example, I believe instead of, you know, removing that and giving it to kids, why not just wait until they grow up, and then when they have a more mature sensibility, they can confront that work with a decent mindset and actually go, here, that's a bad word, and see the N-word being used in that social context instead of just removing it completely. Just have them read it later.
And proposition to respond?
Firstly, the important thing to know about our model is that we still allow room for reading these texts that we've identified as, you know, dangerous or dangerous for our society in an academic sense. Just in regards to the first part of the question about the sort of like the ethical sort of conundrum that comes before the practical considerations, I think the most compelling sort of ethical sort of philosophical argument for censorship is that you can't actually sort of paradoxically you can't create a society, and we've mentioned this, where there is freedom of expression while certain ideas are expressed, because certain ideas are against the idea of freedom of expression. So in order to guarantee that right of freedom of expression, then we have to take some of these steps, and as I said, we have mentioned practically as well how this could actually be done in a way that's fair and just.
Alright, and we'll now move on to any abstaining questions. These are questions directed to neither side, and that actually means a question directed to neither side. Mr. McArdle.
This one's really more for the opposition. No, in terms of getting to censor is inherently human. You know, to say something on sort of how we don't want to let people know. neither side really has defined what they mean by censoring historical works. And I just want to sort of each side to elaborate on what they mean, but what does that actually mean?
Proposition to respond first.
Well, if you listened keenly. I recall making a point and everyone sort of scoffing and laughing, saying, I wish I lived in a world where people actually paid attention to things forensically, but we can't guarantee that. If you listen to Chloe's speech, you would have found a precise and exact definition of what we're defining censorship. The removal, essentially, of dangerous ideas, discriminatory hate, things like that from works, works that could potentially, radicalise people and cause damage to society, and the pursuit of greater historical truth by removing things that we know to be errors. That was our definition of censorship, and I think, and you not listening to that is an improved another point. People will not be trusted to take ideas from certain pieces of work.
Do the opposition wish to respond?
Do you? No, I'm just standing.
Don't get smart with me, Hubble.
I actually wrote down Chloe's definition because I did listen, and it excludes revisionism or historical context, which is what he said, but it includes part of what Mr. Vasco said, which was changing of words to fit current morals and sensibility. We know is an error. That's not what censorship is when you keep it for a certain set. No, it's removal of something. This is simply what censorship means, is the removal of words, phrases, ideas, whatever you want it to be. I think, and that would be our definition going forward, to answer your question. I think the problem with that is we're talking about historical words, and you said we don't include historical context. Most of the words like Huckleberry Finn is written in a historical context, where words that we don't agree with are not parlance now, but they were at the time. Then why do we remove them? Just because it makes us feel better? No, this is an open question to everyone. think about it. Don't ponder.
Right, and we'll have time for one more round of questions. This will be once again the quick fire round. Keep your questions and answers. Try and keep them under a minute or 30 seconds. I will be timing you. Go back to the proposition, Mr. Patton.
As one of the examples used by, I believe it was your second speaker, as to works that need to be removed because they're historically inaccurate, you used the example of textbooks used in the American South. Am I accurate in saying that?
Yes.
We were saying these should be censored because they're not accurate and something. The simple fact is, majority of these textbooks were produced by a group called the Daughters of the Confederacy, a group of elite aristocratic women from the South who worked together to produce textbooks that were purposely inaccurate to preserve what they believed it should have been about, and the best way to indoctrinate their children with this belief and this whole kind of thing. Is this not more an example of the danger of censorship than an example of why we should use it now?
Proposition to respond.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and say what the Daughters of the Confederacy did was good. In fact, I think it's abhorrent. But removing their works from the public discourse because we find them to be inaccurate or objectionable, that's still censorship, even if what they did is also censorship.
He's right. Everyone clap, please.
You don't clap when Shay says it. Wake up, sheeple.
You can't tell me what to do.
It's a kind of report. Opposition to respond. You just don't have to if you don't want to. There he is again, Mr. Hubble. Smiling away.
Yeah, ironically, that it is them censoring history. That is your example of it's not okay for them to censor history, but it's okay for us to censor history because we're morally correct. All that is you putting your own morals onto the rest of the world. It's you saying to the rest of in this multicultural global society that we now live in that my idea of truth is truth, my idea of morality is morality. If you step over that line, then we'll censor you. It's not good enough.
Questions now for the opposition, Mr. Hickman.
So it's been something that's been addressed by multiple speakers throughout the debate on the opposition bench. and it's the issue of the dark web very thin, and I love it. Sorry. So that's realistically what's been accepted here, is specifically in some of the points that were made most clearly by the second speaker for the opposition in response there, but it wasn't throughout the speeches, is that there is an inappropriate context for someone to digest Huckleberry Finn, i.e. there can be a point where you are too young to read Huckleberry Finn in this day and age. That's more or less what's been expressed by the bench, even though I'm sure individual members will disagree. That said, does that not recognise that there are some classes or categories of people that it is inappropriate for them to consume material that is then subsequently appropriate for other classes dependent on maturity or development to then consume? That is the point that was made later by the proposition, and the opposition in response just turned around and said that's elitism, even though they espoused a version of the same logic in a different context.
There's a lot to unpack there. Opposition to respond first. As I said, you don't have to. Just leave it if you want. People like, we're getting mad
Guess which individual member disagrees. I mean, my kids could play like the one. I don't really mind. Sorry, Hugh, I didn't realise.
I can only give you so much leeway, Chris. Like, I'm already being a Fine.
I'll take it, it's a bad day. So, that was one particular opinion. I think it's a bit pointless what you're debating. What the difference between is generally we have an acknowledgement that people of a certain age are of a less mature sensibility. As soon as we start dividing people over that age into certain sensibility, then we get into difficulties. Whether we should divide them by ages is a different matter, but that goes into the whole idea of how we construct family. We assume that 4-year-olds don't understand certain words. We can't start assuming that members of the populace who live on an estate don't understand certain words, because then we get into bigotry, which is what was implied by the elitism here. And the idea that, and by the gentleman in the audience, that some people don't understand enough to vote or whatever, you get into difficulties. We generally have an acknowledgement that younger people don't understand things. But I'd also find it interesting that we pick up on a word. And well, isn't slavery a more difficult concept than a word? Isn't that more difficult for a child to comprehend than just a word? So why replace a word with slave?
Still in the bad books though. Proposition to respond.
Morgan's exactly right. This whole age thing, the opposition has essentially stated that it is appropriate in certain circumstances, but limit the ingestion of information by certain classes of people. As I said in our case, we're talking about practical policy making here, and it takes bravery to say it, but we all know that some people in society are not going to necessarily take information in the same way as other members of society, and that some people just might not have the faculties to interpret it in a way that is not dangerous. And that, it sounds elitist, but it is actually true. We can see that with radicalisation of people with certain texts. And these people are from certain disadvantaged backgrounds, and of course we can try and fix that long term by investment in education, but we need a practical solution now. But we don't need platitudes about not dividing society up into this and that. We need to recognise that it's a problem. We have recognised it's a problem. We've proposed a solution that's fair, that's constrained by checks and balances. I don't see how anyone could possibly object.
So great.
Alright, I'll now have one last abstaining point to close us out. Welcome, Expander.
Okay, this is actually an abstaining point, so it is. I would actually like, from this side of the house, would you be able to give an example where in our
That's not
current...
sickening.
What no, so I'm going to give an example too. Would you be able to give an example in our current situation where we do censor things and it is inappropriate for us to censor them, and the fact that this is a substantial risk? And could this side of the House actually give an example where things should have been censored? Take, for example, we're talking about historical documents. There's something from 30 years ago could be a historical document, yet there are people alive today who that directly affects, and that censorship could protect them. So can either side give an example where censorship is bad and censorship could be good?
Go to the opposition first this time.
Right. As historians, you can't just pick and choose what text you kind of look at and what text you don't look at. Like, for example, historians, when they learn about the past, they read everything. Doesn't matter if it's true, doesn't matter if it's false, doesn't matter if it's greatly exaggerated or whatever. Because what that does is it creates a global picture of, you know, what actually people thought at the time. Wherever it was, you know, wherever it was factual accuracies, that just shows that there was a rumour going around that time that this happened that had an effect on something later on. So it does develop our knowledge and we learn from it. So yeah. And yeah, so.
Proposition to respond.
So just to clarify, it was when the censorship is bad, yes? Okay, so censorship is bad when you actually remove the book from the library. We're not saying in our model that we should remove the text altogether. We're saying, and particularly, I did not know Huckleberry Finn was going to be so jarring. It was like an example. Particularly when I was talking about that, it was pertaining to a teaching example in a young children's life. Censorship is bad when you take away the option to read it completely, and that is what our model is rooted in. Yeah.
Right. And with that, we wrap up the evening and we shall move on to the vote. So, get your membership cards ready as...
I have got my card. It's just my own card.
If you've not got a membership card and you raise your hand, I might know if you've paid or not and I can still count you in. And I'll remind you all, this is the vote on speaker ability. This is the vote on which side of the House you believe spoke best, not the one whose arguments you identified with personally. Control yourselves out here. Alright. So, if you wish to vote in favour with the proposition and you believe that they spoke best this evening, please raise your hands on your cards and say aye. Aye. And if you would wish to vote in favour of the opposition, please raise your hand and say nay.
Oh, great. Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Put your hands up high, I'm only 5'6".
And if you would wish to vote abstaining, you believe both sides were equally terrible or equally great, please raise your hands and vote yay. Yeah. Okay. And now I welcome them up one last time. Please welcome our daimyo of democracy. Read me back that vote, Mr. Matthew Bradley.
Yeah. The vote reads 23 ayes, 5 nays, and 8 abstentions.
Then the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Alright, so before we all pack up and I adjourn the meeting, next week we shall be meeting for the debate. This House believes all sins should be forgiven.
Some sins should not be forgiven.
Some sins should not be forgiven. And as I said, we have our competitions going going on. If you wish to go to one of those, speak to Ms. Tara Grace Conley. If you want to speak to one of our regular debates, speak to Mr. Matthew Bryson. If you want to get yourself trained up to be a great speaker like me, talk to Mr. Russell Nairn. If you want to be a judge for our schools club, help us out with the stuff we're doing, talk to Miss Chloe Ferguson. And if you want to have a nice sweet chat, talk to this lovely lad right here.
I'm also on council.